Walang harang.
And whether that was traveling to Buckingham Palace to be there when her coffin arrived, whether that was waiting up to 24 hours to see the Queen as she was lying in state, or whether it is joining the hundreds of thousands along the streets of London today, watching her leave for the last time. We also came on the train to Windsor just now.
Crowds that line the streets of Coronation, and among the
Would it be
crowds
the
actually
P will be
was
doing it?
future First Lady Jacqueline Kennedy. She was reporting on the Queen's coronation, and the question she was asking the public was, will Elizabeth be the last Queen? And that was the question she was asking the article she was writing, and not long after she wrote the article, JFK proposed over the phone, and the rest is history. And such a significant moment.
Yeah, Windsor Castle, which is...
That's what we're looking at.
So this is the chapel within Windsor Castle, where so much history is laid. Actually, you're going to see the Knights of the Garter, which is the highest order of chivalry, really taking a high position in the procession as it arrives there. This is their home, and you'll see members of the royal family sitting in their named seats, Knights of the Garter. It's interesting once you get in there. That's a really historic space.
Well, you put chicken in there.
With royal families.
I don't believe how large Windsor Castle is. The acreage of it.
So people that have visited, it's an amazing place to visit actually. It's a really good tour. But people see that actually there's a whole other part to it which is private, which is where the Queen lived, where she was able to ride freely and enjoy her time in the countryside there.
She did spend a lot of time there during the pandemic. She was there for quite some time, obviously during the Second World War as well. I believe she was sent to live there for security reasons. Obviously, famously, the terrible fire at Windsor Castle as well, which was such a tragedy for the family and for the Queen. She later spoke of that as being an annus horribilis.
Yeah, one of many things that were pretty horrible.
Bad year.
It was not a good year for her.
You can see there actually in that central area. There you go.
Also, even before the war, throughout the 1930s, excuse me, she and her father, mother, and sister, they would spend a lot of time there as a family. And I think she was 14 when she finally went to the castle during World War II.
Yes, and St George's Chapel was. It's such a significant place for the Queen. She's seen so many christenings, weddings, and the funeral of her beloved husband there. It was her own personal church. It was the church on her castle, and she, as Max was saying, the Order of the Garter is a very important ceremony we see every June. And when her father died, she wished to commission him his own special resting place. There's a lot of royals buried in St George's Chapel, Windsor, including Henry VIII, including Charles I, Henry VIII with his third wife, Jane Seymour. And the Queen wished her father to have his own resting place, so she built the George VI Chapel, commissioned in 1962, finished in 1969. And that special chapel, which we can see just on the side, is where the Queen will be laid to rest. Her father is there, her mother was moved there, and her sister, and her husband was just...
Someone who was a guest at the state funeral. Much more coverage ahead as the funeral continues at Windsor Castle, and as we see rituals never seen on live television before. Queen Elizabeth Toffin heading to Windsor Castle right now for her final royal send-off. There'll be one more chance for the British people to celebrate her long and remarkable life and mourn her death and say goodbye. This hour, the doors are opening to St. George's Chapel on the castle grounds for a service largely attended by the royals. crowds are lining the road to the castle as the Queen's coffin makes its way here from London after the state funeral service at Westminster Abbey. We are following the procession every step of the way. When it arrives here in Windsor, it'll travel along the Long Walk toward the castle. King Charles, his siblings, his sons, and other royals will once again escort the Queen's coffin. They'll move through the castle grounds, heading to St. George's Chapel. That is where Queen Elizabeth will be buried, reunited in death with loved ones, including her father, King George VI, and of course her husband, Prince Philip. I'm Anderson Cooper in Windsor, along with Erin Burnett in London. Erin, we are heading into the closing hours of this extraordinary royal funeral.
It has been extraordinary. So many striking images, and simply an incredible and magnificent thing to witness as we have centuries-old traditions, the splendor of the monarchy on display here. The royal military, so core to this, joining with the royal family to escort the Queen's coffin through London and past Buckingham Palace one last time. Her final service. King Charles, of course, all the way to the youngest who were there today. Young Prince George and Princess Charlotte also there. As we saw them then by the car, as their great-grandmother's hearse moved by, feeling the loss and the weight of this extraordinary moment. Joined now by CNN royal commentator Emily Nash, who just attended the Queen's state funeral, of course, along with Richard and Christian here with me. And Emily, so we watched, we could hear. You were inside those doors. What did you see?
I mean, it was quite an extraordinary experience for me. In 20 years as a journalist, I don't think I've ever felt anything like that. World leaders, foreign royals, dignitaries from this country and across the globe gathered, but also ordinary people who are present because they've been honoured by the Queen over the last year of her life. And I think what was amazing about it was that everyone was unified and came together and fell silent for her. There was absolute silence when the last toast was sounded, both inside and out, and that's really extraordinary. Congregation of 2,000 people. Just every moment of it was exceptionally special.
What was it like? I know it's got to be hard to describe, but to be in Westminster Abbey with more than 2,000 people, and then to have utter silence descend.
It was, spine-tingling. And certainly the moment the coffin was brought in, we had this extraordinary music, the sentences from the choir soaring through the Abbey, and I just felt complete goosebumps, seeing the coffin borne there to the front, on the catafalque, in the place where the Queen was crowned and where she was married. Just was, it's going to take me a little while to process my thoughts about this all. But it was a huge privilege to have been present.
Christian and Richard and I were talking about the Archbishop's comments, Archbishop Welby, about the Queen, and that he seems to capture so beautifully what we've heard so much about. He described her as joyful and then present for so many. And it seems that's what you felt. You talk about, obviously, they were the dignitaries and the princes and the princesses from so many countries in that abbey, but also the regular people.
Absolutely.
Who she had honored.
And it was, and I was thinking about this as well. People just had to catch a glimpse of her, and it touched them. It was something they would remember for the rest of their lives. And I think we've seen that again today. You can see it now in the crowds of people outlining, the highway, to see just a glimpse of it going past. She meant so much to so many people, and the fact that you have the whole world gathered there to pay their respects today just sums it all up.
We were saying that in the UK in a normal year there are 2 or 3 state visits. There were hundreds of state visits in just days and just hours, all gathered together. And as you watched that procession in the Abbey, what was the emotion like? And you saw King Charles all the way down to Prince George, the 9-year-old son of Kate and William. Did you see the emotions on their faces?
I think their composure was remarkable. I think the children in particular were extremely well behaved. I thought that it was a very difficult moment for them, particularly as they were walking in procession behind the coffin. It must have taken great courage to do that. We've seen them on display over the course of the last 10 days, and they have managed to contain their emotions exceptionally well. but nevertheless it appears to be very difficult. I thought particularly the King, as God Save the King, rang out around the Abbey.
Yeah,
It
so
was
what
a
did-
huge moment for him.
What was watching his face? How did he? Could you see any of his internal emotions as they played that at that moment?
He just looks incredibly pensive, very solemn, and I'm sure he was just thinking, my goodness, he has sat in that place so many times over the years and sung God Save the Queen to his mother, and suddenly the congregation is singing it to him and she is no longer there, and that was a huge moment in his life.
It's a moment, Aunt Richard, that when he realized. Obviously, there's the exhaustion of the process, and they've known this was going to happen, but then it happens, and there are still moments as a human being, right?
And that is what I think many of us are still coming to terms with as British and citizens here. That moment we knew it couldn't last forever, but now, it's happened. And to your point about the King, he summed it up, the weight of history. It's worth remembering. It's obvious, I know, but it's worth remembering that these people, 15, 20 deep, watching this procession, they're there by the hundreds of thousands of people on the street by their choice.
Richard, you said something a few moments ago when we weren't, on air. But you said that had you not been working, you would have been there.
It's not an if or a possibility, it's a when. If I'd not been working this week, I would absolutely have slept on the streets, as I did for the wedding of Charles and Diana, for Diana's funeral, since I've been working on these royal events, but no question about it. For me, it would be the only place to be.
The only place to be, just the beloved figure. And
Well,
you have on your membership at the
History,
Queen.
yeah, it's history. This is part of history. That's why so many people have come together in this moment of community, unity, and for a few days to rise above the fray and to, have this amazing outpouring. They're traveling west of London now on a road that would normally take to the airport, but then leads on to Windsor, just to situate where the motorcade is. But one thing we learned, didn't we, Erin, that the piper at the end of the funeral mass inside the Abbey was the same piper who woke her up every morning at 7:15, we're told, playing the pipes under her window for some 15 minutes. I think that's a remarkable thing. And I think, as Kate Williams alluded to, this queen once said to her people and to her troops, I am not the kind of monarch who can direct you into war or pass legislation, but what I can give you is my love and my service. And she's going to be buried in St. George's Chapel, where we've just heard Henry VIII is buried. His daughter became the first great Elizabethan, who once famously said, when she was seeing off her troops into battle, I may have the body of a weak and feeble woman, but I have the heart and stomach of a king, and the King of England at that. And it's remarkable that this second Elizabeth was able in some way to also have that power just by the majesty and the unity that she brought, even though it's not governing power.
And Christiane, you also, as I mentioned briefly, but tell us about meeting the Queen.
Well, look, I mean, I was very, very, very proud to have been honoured by the Queen. The government draws up a list for who are going to get what's called Queen's Honours. And I got mine for services to journalism, and it remains, a source of great pride. And she was wonderful, and I thanked her at the time for that, but also for opening the CNN office here in London. So here's the thing, just to say, that just about everybody, as Emily has said and others have said, have a moment, whether it's us, whether it's the royal family, the Davies, or all the people who met her on her walkabout, on her openings of, roads and
She was
schools, yeah.
touchable in that sense to the
And you could feel that they knew her. And they kind of did, because it was 70 years, especially the Christmas broadcast. I mean, that was a tangible thing.
That even in the US, of course, we saw that every year.
One of the things that you talked about is this ability of her to just be with you. And when I met her, when she opened this in London, we were terribly worried. Would she go up the stairs, or would she take a ramp to get into the studio?
There she is.
Absolutely. And so what she's talking about there, she's asking me, what about my earpiece?
Really?
She was fascinated that we were able to talk and listen at the same time. And she was quite, she had that, I've heard it a million times, she had that ability to make you feel you were just the person she was hoping to meet.
Well, that's a gift.
Of
That
course,
so few human beings have.
the other time I saw her, I only saw her hand. I was covering Mikhail Gorbachev's visit to Windsor Castle. I was a young junior radio reporter, and I stayed later than I should have done because I was doing a last report. And I was in the attic and I walked downstairs. I thought I'll have a quick look around. And then I suddenly realised in front of me there was a footman, a butler holding a tray with a glass. And out came the hand, and I could hear the Queen's voice saying thank you. And I just backed off quickly before I got arrested.
But you know, the idea of Gorbachev, I mean, she has seen so many world leaders and so many huge epochs of history, from fascism to communist totalitarianism to just about all the major events of the 20th and the 21st century. She's lived through. I mean, it is remarkable. The explosion of democracy as well.
And Emily, it's interesting. Christiane and I were mentioning earlier. And this came to mind looking at the Queen with you, Richard, at the Bureau, in that bright neon green. That her clothing choices were so purposeful. Christiane was saying, sort of, to give her presence, to say, I am here, and I do want to be seen.
Very much so. It was about being seen. She always said she had to be seen to be believed. But just going back to what you were saying there about her making people feel comfortable and giving a sense of that through her clothing. I was present when President Obama came to visit her at Windsor Castle, and she arrived as the helicopter landed in her country clothes and wearing a silk headscarf. And that to me was an incredible moment. She's greeting the US president in her relaxed weekend clothes, and it was very much tonally meeting. We were very comfortable together. It was very special to see that.
And President Obama has spoken about that, and before Nelson Mandela was going to be the only person to call her Elizabeth. I mean, out of the horror of apartheid comes this unbelievable friendship with the first black elected leader of a member of the Commonwealth. And she and he bonded, incredibly well. And I think one of the great color clothing moments was when she donned again that emerald green and went to Ireland for the first time. 100 years of British monarchy in that place, and then reached across the aisle in Northern Ireland to former members of the IRA who had actually blown up her own uncle by marriage, Lord Mountbatten. She had this ability to be part of the reconciliation process that those people talk about now.
Richard, they were purposefully, it seemed not, right? Yes.
Not too fashionable, not too dowdy, and of course her famous thrift. Nothing got thrown away. Nothing got thrown away. Everything was recycled, you'd see. And she took huge pride in the fact that, we could point out that she wore that coat or that hat in that event 10, 15 years ago. And out it came again with maybe a modification.
Well, you see that even now with Princess Kate. They make a point about the same pumps that are being worn, or her famous nude pumps that she likes to wear. That seems to transfer as
All
well.
the royal women have learned from the Queen. I think, interestingly, today, Angela Kelly, the Queen's longtime confidant and dresser, was in the Abbey, and this is the woman who has been responsible for the Queen's outfits for so many years. And I mean, she's talked about the level of detail and planning that goes into that. But absolutely key was the diplomatic dressing.
And I would say, look, I mean, let's face it, after this mourning period, this country is going to get hit around the face by the fact of the politics and the economic crisis that exists right now. And, we're going to have to deal with a very, very difficult cost of living, inflation, war in Europe, all of that, without this unifying figure, and coming to face with that when the Prime Minister starts, actual politics again after this period of mourning. And perhaps part of that thriftiness, I don't know, I mean, I'm not in her wardrobe, but there was something, I mean, she had to at least try to, bond with the people in some kind of fashion. She couldn't be overly extravagant, even though she's a multi-billionaire and has all this property. There was an effort to also try to
That's why
to the war. It goes back to the war and to a
Oh,
mother.
I've got lots
and
of
to all
money,
those
I
periods
can
where
do
she
whatever
saw
I
what was-
want.
What was necessary.
But we're out.
Well, she saw and
people
she
get
experienced. I
poor.
would say also we're seeing here St. George's Chapel, where of course will be the next
That the Queen
ceremony and the burial. These are just the first pictures that we're getting of those who have gathered there. Richard, many of whom are of course members of the royal family, but also members of the royal household. And look at that. That is the walk, of course, at Windsor. Look at that. Look at those crowds.
So, because a household, it is people who have given Deptford House and the Buckingham Palace for that one night. They
Not
couldn't
me,
take it
innit?
straight to Westminster. It was
If
designed
you
so
wasn't
that
the Queen,
those
I
who
would.
had served Her Majesty.
Because of the Queen, I would have kept my
One last point I want to have you make, Richard, here is that
But
you said something about the butler with the silver
Oh, yeah.
tray and the cup,
Yes.
and you said something at the end. You said you heard her say thank you.
Oh, yeah.
benefit.
That there was a grace and a graciousness which we do not always see present in people who are used to having so much at their fingertips.
The Queen hated discourtesy, impoliteness. She would never keep you waiting. She would never keep anybody waiting. And the efforts she would go to do an event, even when I had a cold or unwell, because she knew there were people waiting for her and it would have to be rescheduled. No, the Queen was,
Which we still right to the very end.
yes, indeed, with the Prime Minister.
And as the clouds were here earlier, as the funeral was underway, and then the sun came out, as you
Well,
see,
people then.
an absolutely beautiful autumnal day, and that long walk to Windsor, where the Queen will soon be, and already members of the royal
That's
family and the royal
that's
household
just
are
the-
gathered
that's
at
just the
St.
entrance.
George's. We are awaiting the arrival of the Queen's coffin in
There's
Windsor.
a nice day
And
there.
talking to people in that crowd, again, people, every one of whom has chosen to be there, made sacrifice to be there, to see her. And this will be an historic ceremony that will play out live on television for the first time ever. This funeral service of a monarch. Stay with us as our special coverage continues.
Well, not summer. And there's summer in the UK. It's raining, so President's Day. Oh, this is great. Lots of people. Charities with animals, having children. Homeless. Yeah, 73rd.
final goodbye to Queen Elizabeth moves next to Windsor Castle. Crowds here in Windsor are awaiting the arrival of the coffin following the state funeral. And one day promises to be another moment of pageantry and mourning in honor of the most well-known monarch in recent history. Anna Stewart is on the walk here in Windsor, where people are waiting to see the Queen's coffin pass by. And it is, of course, what we were saying earlier, how sort of the scene in Windsor is a bit more intimate than we have even seen in London. The streets are narrower. Explain what you have been seeing and hearing from people.
It's been an incredibly beautiful atmosphere. There are absolutely thousands and thousands of people that are lining the long walk. This is where the procession will pass on its way to Windsor Castle. So this is very much where people, the public at least, will get the very last chance to say goodbye to Her Majesty. And I can show you where the procession will go with the state hearse. You can see the Royal Marines are already lining that procession route, which means everyone has stood up. And actually they were able to watch the state funeral on the big screens. And the emotions here have been incredible. Lots of tears, but also lots of laughter. I think this is something we've seen actually really throughout the week. Is the incredible mix of emotion. People very sad for the passing of the Queen, but also happy to get together. I can show you some of these people here. Claudette, you've been here since about 6 a.m, I think.
Yes, I have, yeah.
How are you feeling? How did you feel watching the state funeral?
Really, really emotional. It was so quiet. Everybody was so respectful and quiet. And after the funeral, when they sung God Save the King, everybody stood up, and it was just like electric.
Yeah, so privileged. Goose pimples, really, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
And how are you going to feel when you see the procession go past here? Because, of course, lots of us have seen the coffin on television, some pictures of it, but how do you think it'll feel watching it go past?
Very emotional. I think I've been very tearful all week. I didn't realise this was the Queen recently. So I think it's going to be very emotional.
And tell me how you've been feeling all weeks, actually. This has been a long week. It's been days and days of this.
Yeah, it's been a strange week. Don't think we fully came to terms with what has happened until actually being here, but it's been a very weird week.
It's been a weird week. Lots of these guys have been here for royal weddings and platinum jubilees and lots of celebration, but of course this is bringing everyone together for something that's much more somber and sad. But I definitely feel like the atmosphere is there in terms of bringing people together, and it's a moment people are going to remember, and that's part of the reason.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, and we're seeing lines of people lining the highway, even right now, thin at times, thick at times, as the Queen's motorcade continues to head onward to Windsor. Nada Bashir is on High Street in Windsor with more crowds. Nada, where you are.
Look, Anthony, I'd say it is absolutely remarkable to see just how many people have stood out today to pay their respects to the Queen. This is a mistake that was very dear to the Queen. She spent much of her life in the later years, and it is very dear to the royal family as a whole. This will be the very location where the family pays their respects in a private service later today. But for many people who actually live in Windsor, this is, of course, a historic moment. Royal families have become quite familiar to the people who live in this town. They are, of course, an integral part of this town. And I'm joined by Karis and Owen, who actually grew up in Windsor. What is it like here to be here to see this moment, because you see the Queen's state funeral in this town?
Yeah, it's just super overwhelming, just like the amount of people that have come to Windsor, like for us who just grew up here. It just seems so normal, and like we didn't think anything of it, and then there's so many people here to pay their respects, obviously.
Yeah, we've lived here. She's been our neighbour for 34 years, so and we were born and raised here. So it's kind of it's a really sad day, but it's almost so we kind of came out today because we thought it'd be a good idea to come and see her, say our final farewells. We're going to go down to the long walk later and just kind of see her come up. Yeah, it's just really nice to kind of see that she's coming home.
I mean, obviously the new king
You watch
as
next
well.
few days, it'll be all on
Have you
YouTube.
had a chance to see the
Queen's
procession so
funeral.
far in London?
We haven't, but we have seen the King before. I mean, you've got Mary in the building just behind us here, 17 years ago to Camilla. So we know that this is a big place for him as well. He loves Windsor as much as the Queen loved Windsor. So
I know that because no company with YouTube channel
Let's be there, you are there in the front of that and can go.
For me, it's 20 for 24 hours.
That's the news, what they doing, having grown. They have their own CNN.
That's American company.
And here in Windsor, with Max Foster, Kate Williams, and Stephen's Clarissa Ward. Again, Clarissa, we were talking before about just the crowds, the surprise to see, even on a road like this, crowds lined up.
All the way going out of London
That's
along
what I said to you
roads
last
that
week.
are really
I heard
just,
your
you know,
voice
for
there.
traffic coming in and
Last
out.
week I
You're
said.
seeing those people
I heard-
desperately
I
hoping
heard
Yeah,
your
last
voice.
week
for
I
a
said to
glimpse.
you.
And I think this really
They're
speaks
opening
to
the store on
something, because the
Monday
Queen
for
was so
funeral.
actively involved in every aspect of the planning of her funeral. It speaks to her instinct and understanding of the soft power of spectacle. You know, the Queen famously was part of the decision to have her coronation televised, which was unprecedented at the time. She understood the power of that image, the power of the pageantry, the power of tradition.
Took a little bit of convincing.
Took a little bit of convincing, but then you see that the monarchy does pomp and pageantry and precision and tradition in a way that no one else in the world does.
It is strange, you know, in most of our lives, we don't see bodies up close. We don't see coffins up close. There are things which are in funeral homes and we see it in cemeteries. But so for so many people to have this intimate experience with the Queen, I remember you were standing outside Buckingham Palace when her body was returned there. You described sort of the feeling in the crowd of this jolt of electricity. And I think there's something to that. I think there's something about people's relationship with the Queen, and then to the intimacy of seeing her with these crowds so close together. It's a 2-lane highway or a single-lane road in Windsor.
And you hear them now even cheering. And it's unexpected when it happens. There's a sort of somber moment of reverence, and then as the Queen's coffin draws closer, you do just hear people sort of spontaneously erupt into applause and cheers. Max pointed out some people throwing flowers as well. It is this extraordinary moment to see up close.
It's going to be interesting to see, isn't it, once they get here to Windsor, when we're in Windsor, when we're at the Essex wedding, and how it's a similar atmosphere in a way. You know, there's so much excitement about the wedding, and on this occasion, there's sort of excitement about the Queen's reign. You know, obviously it's tinged with lots of sadness. But it feels like that big sense of occasion, because that wedding was so seismic, wasn't it, for the royal family, the monarchy, and that's the last sort of memory of a big event we have here in Windsor.
Explain what happens when the Queen's casket arrives here in Windsor.
So the casket they will form a procession, so the military will join with this procession here, and it will make its way through Windsor and along the Long Walk, and then...
Yeah, the Long Walk is what?
About 1.5 miles.
Okay.
Yeah, and then when it gets into town, then the King and the other senior members of the royal family behind the coffin in a procession. So a similar thing, really similar feel to what we had in London.
Is that through streets?
Yes.
So I mean, there is that intimacy of people being close on either side.
And then it will go into the castle, and then we'll get to those great west steps where the coffin that will arrive in the hearse, and then pallbearers will come and carry it up into the chapel for a much more intimate service. Still big, still hundreds of people, but more intimate, because it's about royalty coming together and marking
and still
moments. That will be televised. The only bit that won't be televised will be this evening when the coffin is actually buried along.
Expected there, and also royal families, and also members of the Queen's household. So we have paid thanks to the Queen as the international Queen, foreign royals, dignitaries, and now also it's a Queen who has her own staff, her own estate. She managed her own estates, and that is so significant. And we really are going to see some very moving moments here at Windsor, because it's the final ceremonies, it's a very significant ceremony at the end of the Queen's committal service, by which what we've been seeing all through, the crown, the orb and the sceptre, the symbols of majesty, the imperial state crown that she wears at the state opening of Parliament that she wore after her coronation, they will be removed from the coffin and they'll be taken away and put on the altar, and then of course they will next be used by the future king. And after that, the Lord Chamberlain, who is the head of the Queen's staff, he will break his silver staff, and that symbolises that he is no longer of the Queen's household, he is of the King's household.
Technically a wand.
Yes, a wand.
Who breaks the wand, and that, so that symbolises the end of his work, as the most senior person in the household.
It's a line.
It's called the Lord Chamberlain's wand, yes.
Okay.
And it gets broken, and the coffin gets lowered down into the vault. You were talking about other kings and queens being buried there. I mean, most of them are in a vault under the floor of the aisle, literally coffins on shelves. And that's where the queen will rest until she's buried later on.
So they're not actually buried in the ground in dirt. They are just in an underground vault.
Those ones are. They stay there, but the queen will be taken out this evening and buried into the ground. And none of this, as Kate says, have we ever seen on TV, because the last big occasion we saw was the coronation, but none of these services have we seen on TV. And I think that moment with the crown jewels is pretty profound.
So significant, so profound.
Still ahead, we'll learn even more about the extraordinary service that is coming up at St. George's Chapel as the Queen's coffin gets closer to the grounds of Windsor Castle. We'll return in a moment.
everyone, as we watch these live pictures of the Queen's cortege heading to Windsor, Queen Elizabeth's coffin will soon make its approach to Windsor Castle for the final ceremonies before she is laid to rest on the castle grounds. Live pictures there, throngs of people lining up the road there to the castle to welcome the Queen back to her Windsor home for the very last time. Let's get out to the crowds now. As soon as Bianca Nogolo is at Windsor for us. Bianca, tell us about the dramatic rituals and images that we are about to see now.
Well, Don, it is in Windsor, the Queen's beloved Windsor Castle, that the nation and her family will say their final farewells. It is a place that has been a centripetal force of British monarchy for about 1,000 years. What we're expecting is a committal ceremony to begin around 4 p.m. local time. That is a ceremony that has been well planned over the years by the Queen, so she's had the primary hand in designing it. We're expecting psalms, hymns, a bidding, a Russian chant, which was also in Prince Philip, her husband's committal ceremony as well. We're also going to hear from an organist, and the official styles of the Queen will be recited loud as well. And also, John, at the end of that committal ceremony is when we'll see some British traditions, some eccentric acts which have to take place to officially remove the Queen from the crown for the last time. So the three greatest symbols of monarchy, that would be the imperial crown. Sorry, there's a bit of sound. There is no greater authority in England than the sovereign. That will be removed from the coffin. Then the orb, which is the golden ball that's jewel encrusted, topped by a cross, which is the symbol of the divine right of monarchs, and the scepter, which is the symbol of temporal power. All of those will be removed from the coffin to separate the Queen from her for the last time. Then there'll be a private ceremony at around 7:30 p.m. And finally, the Queen will be laid to rest where the rest of her family are, in an intimate, small, simple memorial chapel just to the north side of St. George's Chapel that was actually designed and commissioned by the Queen for her late father, King George VI. John.
Bianca Nogolo, thank you very much. Out in the crowds at Windsor. We want to continue the conversation now. I think we should talk about these extraordinary pictures to our folks who are here in studio. 22 miles here, lined with people 10 deep for the entire route, and most of the route doesn't even have barriers holding these people back. I mean, there are throngs and throngs of people, Trisha, who are out there just wanting to get a glimpse of the Queen for the final time.
I love that the cortege went through a very industrial area that I know quite well, Slough. Most of the workers for Heathrow Airport, it's a real working class area, and an area that the Queen would know quite well.
May I just stop you?
Yeah.
Hear the applause.
Yeah, the applause is great.
Pardon me. Listen, when I was there last week, you did not have this sort of sentiment. It was mostly solemn, very little
People were in
cheering.
shock. People were in shock. People were in shock.
The mood has changed.
The mood has changed now. This is appreciation. This is love. This is appreciation. This is, yes, you know, our Queen.
Throwing
This is
flowers.
pride.
Not throw flowers. So very little of that last week.
Pride as well. Pride. Pride to have the Queen. Pride about all of this. It really has reignited pride in their country, in Britain.
And this is also with the throwing flowers. Obviously, this is, I think, a celebration. Is it fair to say, of the Queen's life?
How are you, mate? How are you? What? chin up, not tucked it. Oh.
black, mourning her husband. And they're coming up to the Filipino, and she just like
I think they want to protect the real bloody.
somehow brought it all to me. You have dedicated yourself to helping those in need during the coronavirus. What did it mean to you to be invited to this funeral? Did you even expect something to happen?
No, I absolutely did not expect it. I nearly dropped the phone when I received the phone call
Truly.
with the invitation. But the guest list really reflected what the Queen was like. She was incredibly, she had an incredible ability to build rapport with dignitaries and presidents, but as well as very normal people. And today, at this funeral that we went to, there was a mix. You have the kings and queens, but you also have very, very normal people. And that was what the Queen was like. She had this ability to connect with people from all sorts of backgrounds and make them feel very special.
What was it like?
I was incredibly excited, quite nervous. I felt a huge sense of responsibility to represent everybody connected to Dogs Trust and the many, many thousands of people who've adopted dogs from us over the years. So yeah, it was a big thing. I was very, very proud to be there today.
Stunning moment, and as Erica Canterbury said, that she who is present for so many, present for both of you, as well as present for all the most famous people, leaders in the world who were in that room. As we look here at Windsor, the casket will soon be coming, and for members of the family and also the royal household, also those who were able to see her in such a deeply personal way over so many years, and see approaching their hearse, heading towards Windsor Castle.
Instead you eat your video with drinking. What?
Be laid to rest.
Late?
Listen,
Late rest?
the Queen died. She
Oh, all people
laid to
died.
rest in about 15 minutes or so.
That's their life. Our life, we don't know until we. She already rests in peace. She already rests in peace. No tired. No thinking too much. Peaceful already.
And that's what I want after me. Peaceful life.
You're annoying, peaceful life.
No stress. No nagging.
Because you stubborn-head always. Like your mom, always nagging at you. Because you are stubborn-head. You are not following your mother. You
I'll
have,
follow my dad.
if you have a mother, you respect because your mom is carrying you 9 months and keep you on child. How it's hard if you are a female to care your child. Carrying 9 months on your
Yes, the Philippines, not in the place.
carrying your 9 months on your stomach.
Only you did it once. You did have 6
See,
kids.
you have a reason always, so it means you are annoying, stubborn. You don't respect for the human, for the
You
woman.
gave birth once.
Woman, how many children you carrying? For example, you have 3 children.
Well, Emma had 4 children. All cesarean, cut up. Stomach cut. Baby
Cesarean, oh see?
Yeah, cut up.
See how hard that?
Yeah, 4.
So man is always making only, they no respect for the woman.
What did I go
All
for 7
women need to
years?
respect. If you are no respect on your parents, you are not good child.
That's even kid.
Windsor Castle, we are about to see the dramatic finale to an unparalleled day of royal pomp ceremony all in honor of the monarch whose reign spanned the better part of a century, 70 years. Once the Queen's coffin arrives here, the first will move down the long walk toward Windsor Castle. King Charles and his family once again taking their places in the royal procession as it travels through the castle grounds. We'll serve with them to this gap. There, you'll see something that had never been televised live before. The coffin of the British monarch lowered into the royal vault. Anna Stewart is proud in Windsor and explain where you are along the route and what you would like to say.
We're about midway down along this is the route. The St. Hurst will come down as a section, the final procession to Windsor Castle. So really the last opportunity for the public to say goodbye to Her Majesty the Queen. And you can see, Anthony, there are just thousands and thousands of people here. And actually the last 5-10 minutes, it's actually gone quite quiet. It feels quite a tense atmosphere now. Just half an hour ago, with that technique, that you can hear the tension, I think, as people watch that. Many royal events in the past have happened, we believe most recently, that we brought together here for a much more sombre occasion. And I think they are here to pay their respects to Her Majesty, but also to be here to mark history. And I think it's important to remember that this is one of those moments that people will remember for the rest of their lives. So a fascinating atmosphere here. I think people will be quite emotional once we see the coffin pass. Lots of people want to see the Queen Line and say not everyone was able to get there. So this is just one more opportunity really for people to say their final respects and their final farewell.
Windsor Castle stage and force and attraction, but also a home for Queen Elizabeth, really through much of her life. Spent a lot of time here as a young child. I wanted to also get an update on the kind of rituals that we are about to see. Let's check in CNN's Bianca Nubilo, who is more on that. Bianca, explain where you are.
I'm going to get like the Henry Estate at Windsor Castle, so where the ceremony will be happening at 4 p.m. local time with missile service. That's straight behind me, if you can imagine that. And then where the Queen will finally lay to rest is a smaller chapel off St. George, which was named after her father, the King George VI Memorial Chapel, commissioned by the Queen herself back in the 1960s, and that's just slightly to the right of the main chapel. Now, that's competing with the Queen's fairly modest approach to some things in life. Her final resting place is a very intimate, small, and simple chapel. It's only 3 meters by 4.25 meters, and she'll be buried alongside her father, her mother, her sister.
Queen comes out of the
Then
winter.
we'll move from the royal vault into St. George's Chapel, and then we'll She was
cat sleep.
But they're
Careful.
sleeping. 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 Sleeping.
His voice is sleep. Hah? Oh, no, persis. English. What?
Line. Your mouth.
What you didn't tell me, did you?
You have to cut sleep in your mouth.
Edit it. You don't have to edit, don't you?
No, line.
You don't have to edit.
Don't talk to me.
That's what I go to get me back to UK. I went out of shit. On your own. On your own. Decent.
This is what's called the stepping off. It's going to pause and then the procession is going to join the hearse, and that's going to be the formal procession up to the chapel. And in about half an hour, the royal family will join that procession. Also, something very unique is about to happen on this one. Is you're going to hear a bell, which is the opening toll on the death of the monarch. It's in the castle. It's called the Sebastopol bell, and it's taken from Sebastopol in Crimea in the 1800s during the siege of Crimea. So these things are all so simple. Well, that kind of bell was run for a part of the group up. Transition toward the final. Before the royal family join.
So sleep. Very fun slow. You ain't got it. You got to see.
These are, there's not the same congregation as it was this moment at the end, which is quite extraordinary, we've never seen before. The crown jewels being taken off the coffin and the coffin. I don't think we'll see the actual moment the coffin is lowered, but I think we will see the chapel at that time, but they normally will take the camera away and just say that based on what they're still. And it's been a very religious service, speaking to the Queen's utter commitment to her religion. There will be nods through there, Prince Philip as well, throughout. Bits of music that were played at his major moments as well. All the celebration would be very good in later in the evening. And that's the bell you're having. So there's two bells which will be ringing in Windsor Castle. One of them is the Sebastopol bell.
royals from other countries as well who are visiting. And just an extraordinary moment to hear, as you said, the sound of those horses' hoofs and those guards working.
Yes, there was gun salutes as well during the procession.
This is the image many people around the world would have seen of British troops moving into their land, their territory, sometimes being greeted welcome, sometimes more well, not probably not. But what an incredible image to set in this one.
Well, this is the head of the armed forces being laid to rest. This is the line after the greet the coffin arrived. And that'd be quite spectacular as well.
Just listening to the music.
It wanted again.
No.
Let's remove.
Attitude again. No, right attitude.
The line of troops really goes back a long way. It looks smaller, but there's even more coming after the household cavalry.
Yes, we have over 400, and as you say, the household cavalry are leading, the ones who always protect her. The King's Lifeguard mounted behind her, also firing guns. Of course, it was the King's Lifeguard and their gun carriage who carried her to Westminster Hall on Wednesday, and they're now escorting her on her final journey. These regiments, who are the elite regiments of the British Army, and they're also the ones that protected the Queen. The household cavalry would do so, and the King's Lifeguard would relieve them during the summer to give the horses a break. And this moment for them is such significant, such a great moment. And as you were saying, here the guns being fired there, it is, although smaller than it was in London, a full military procession and a full military being laid to rest.
So you've got the police at the front, then you've got the dismounted household cavalry. The first division of the Sovereign's escort and horses there, so they always support the Sovereign at moments, and obviously the Sovereign isn't there right now, but they're honorary guard for her. And then you've got the massed pipes and bands behind, and they will play later on, I'm told, band of the Grenadier Guards, and then another dismounted band with the household cavalry. And it continues when you've got the senior members of the military then walking behind, and then household staff as well. The Earl Marshal, who I'll point out to you, who's organised this whole 10 days, and his sole job is looking overseeing state occasions. And there's a bit of a joke going around that someone give the NHS to the Earl Marshal to run.
You can imagine how extraordinary the organization, the choreography of Operation London Bridge, as it was codenamed, really came to be in the 1960s, and there have been many decades and multiple annual reviews in place to ensure that every single detail was planned up to the very minute. But still, to watch it play out over the course of 10 days in such a seamless fashion is really quite something to behold.
Do we know which members of the family will be walking behind the hearse?
We do, it is. It's a similar format as we had earlier, so there's going to be Prince Edward, Prince Andrew, Princess Anne and the King in the first line, followed by Peter Phillips, who is Anne's son, the Duke of Sussex, Harry, and Prince William. And then after them will be Tim Lawrence, who's Anne's husband, the Duke of Gloucester, who's a first cousin of the Queen. And people don't know who he is, but he's actually a very central, big confidant of the Queen. And he lives in Kensington Palace, was always supported by the Queen. So it'll be interesting to see how some of these other royals will be supported by the new King. Earl of Snowdon as well will also be there, who's Princess Margaret's son. I think they'll be joining in about half an hour.
Seeing that at St. George's Chapel.
Lining the steps, so this will be quite spectacular. When you get the image from the bottom of those steps, this is where the coffin will be taken by pallbearers and carried up those steps. Imagine the challenge. I can't remember exactly how many steps there are, I've been told in the past, but that's a massive technical challenge to carry the coffin up those stairs. It's very heavy, it's lead lined.
And the King's Lifeguard, the Sovereign Guard, yet there again, there'll be soldiers and sailors lining the entire route there to welcome the Queen back to Windsor. The chapel, St George's, in which she sees happy events, weddings, baptisms, but also the funeral of her own husband, and now finally will be laid to rest with her father and mother.
So this is the main entrance, this is where the coffin will go in, and then there's the royal family will go in. There's a side entrance where the other monarchs from other countries, also the prime ministers from the realms, all of whom now have the king as head of state, and governors general from those nations as well. They're representatives of the monarch in the realms. This is the spectacular long walk where everyone's come out and they've been looking at the big screens, which is going to get a bit of a reaction to that, once they plot that.
It is shoulder to shoulder as far as the eye can see on the walk.
This is the land that the Queen loved. This is, this is the estate. This is where she was allowed to ride every weekend and be free. It's very well protected, beautiful countryside. Prince Harry's kept his house there. Prince William now lives there with his family because his children have been just started literally at a school nearby. It's going to be very interesting to see who takes residence in the castle. The obvious choice, I guess, is the Prince of Wales, but I don't think the King has had a particular attachment to it, but the Prince of Wales has a house on the estate, as does Prince Harry and the Duke of York, but the main residence in the castle was the Queen's residence. We haven't been told who's going to be taking that.
These fantastic state apartments built by Charles II. It's as you say, it's been 1,000 years of castle, and it was so loved by the Queen. And here she is being escorted by the household cavalry, and just behind them you can hear them, the massed pipes and drums of the Scottish and Irish regiments. And I think that's one of the most poignant moments we're going to see during the committal service. In the final moment when the Queen's coffin is lowered, her personal bagpiper will play Over the Sea to Sky, and that was a moment we remember from the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral when the piper was playing and the music faded. This moment by which the personal bagpiper will play once more, very significant. And here we are, the foreign royals, coming towards us, all related to the Queen, the King of Holland and Queen Maxima.
If you were going to look at a family tree, it all goes up to Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. When it comes to European monarchy, they're all related. So this is a family moment for them, but you'll also have royals from other parts of the world.
The King of Holland was leading the way there, and of course the only reigning queen we have left is the Queen of Denmark, recently celebrated her 50th anniversary.
I remember interviewing Tony Blair arriving as well with Cherie, interviewing Queen Margrethe at one of her jubilees, and she would talk about how she and the Queen Elizabeth and also the Queen of the Netherlands are the only three people that had anything in common. Then the Queen of the Netherlands retired and it was just the two of them, and now Queen Margrethe of Denmark, as Kate was saying, is in this sole position. There's King and Queen of Sweden there on the right.
Holland at the front, Netherlands at the front with Queen Maxima.
Yeah, Queen Beatrice, who was one of Elizabeth's contemporaries, is retired now. So there is a tradition in other monarchies to abdicate, but not in this monarchy, which is why the Queen served as long as she did.
And was working 2 days before she passed, and there is this abdication tradition in other monarchies that you retire so the Crown Prince or Princess can take over.
I mean, these pictures will live in history. And as you say, Anderson, earlier, if they were black and white, they could come from any era.
Any era, yeah.
What a procession, what an honour, I mean, what a moment. They've been planning, they've been rehearsing, but nothing can live up to the actual moment by which they escort the Queen on her final journey. It's so significant, will mean so much to all of these soldiers, these servicewomen, these people who've served so greatly, and really the honour is so great, the significance, the privilege, and this moment where the Queen goes on her final journey, it's such a meaningful picture, as you say, and although so much is like the funeral of George VI, so much.
Tell us what you're seeing from your vantage point and the people around you.
It's an absolutely beautiful scene right here. So we're currently looking at the lifeguards from the Household Cavalry who are mounted and passing by. The whole crowd, and we're talking thousands and thousands of people, have fallen silent. They've all rushed up to the barricades, and the people are holding their phones trying to catch a glimpse of what will pass. We can hear the bagpipes now, this beautiful procession, and in the background, the incredible minute guns from the King's Troop Royal Horse Artillery, and once in a while the bell tolls. An electric atmosphere. I think this is one of those moments where everyone suddenly feels quite emotional, and they're waiting for that state hearse to pass them. But right now, all you can hear is the footsteps, the drums, the band, but not a word from the thousands of people crowded here to say goodbye to the Queen for the very last time. Anthony.
Yeah, let's just listen to the bagpipes today.
Having a stick of cigarillo, back, room, window. Cigarillo here inside the room.
Issa Suarez is also with us, a singer there along the long walk. Issa, if you can't tell us where you are and what the people around you are doing.
Anderson, we're just further up from Anna, actually close to the entrance of Windsor Castle here, and I can tell you in the last kind of 20-30 minutes, people started to take their phones out. Children have got on their parents' shoulders to get this moment. This is truly a family affair. All eyes looking down the royal kids to try and get a glimpse, of course, of the Queen's hearse. This is a moment that so many people are just going to be waiting for. There is silence. There's also a bit of nerves, and I think a couple of solemn moments. It's gone quiet very quickly. This is something that people said to me 15 minutes, 6 o'clock. Moments, it turned them off because of safety reasons, because of the horses as they come close to make their way here along the long walk. This is truly a family affair, and you can see that from the images. So many families have come here and with picnics, with blankets, with chairs. Some have stayed the night. I've met servicemen and women. I've met younger children, all wanting to be here and pay their final respects. And what King Charles called his mother's last great journey, Anderson.
It's also extraordinary. I mean, again, I keep coming back to this, but just how close people are to the monarch, how close they are to. I mean, it's just a few feet on either side that they are that close. I mean, it's very rare in history that probably anybody has gotten that close, at least in recent history, to the monarch in this way.
I think that's why it feels very personal for people. In addition to sort of participating in this grand theatrical moment, there is a moment for everyone standing along the way to have that occasion to watch the Queen's coffin and to have a sort of a more private, introspective.
And we're so, I think, unused. I've been doing this podcast about loss and grief, and one of the things that we've been talking about is how we are unused in this day and age to public rituals of grief. It's not something we see very often. It's not something that people knew, family members who had died in past centuries, and there were markers and people mourned for a year of public mourning. It's very rare to see public mourning like this, and I think people relate to it and see their own grief in it. Liz Truss, the British Prime Minister, now entering St. George's Chapel, which is nearly full with visiting dignitaries, other royal family members, and extended royalty from all over Europe.
I'm presuming we'll see the Knights of the Garter appear in their full regalia as well. Pretty spectacular. That's the case. So you'll see some former prime ministers, Tony Blair. Did we see Tony? We saw on the right, so he wasn't in the full regalia, but Tony Blair's not here as a former prime minister, but as a Knight of the Garter. And John Major will be the same.